Today we are exploring a complete rewriting of Europe's history as I asked my subscribers to vote on an alternate Congress of Vienna, the peace deal that ended the Napoleonic Wars. This idea was inspired by Emperor Tigerstar, who made a similar video on the Treaty of Versailles linked below. I don't just want to steal Tigerstar's idea, so to separate myself, I will take this map you guys come up with and write out a full alternate history video, releasing this Saturday. Subscribe to be notified for that. But enough said, let's dive into the map. To start right off, one of the most important nations in stopping Napoleon was Russia. When Napoleon was at the peak of his power, he launched an invasion of the nation where he would lose most of his army, setting up for the final anti-Napoleon coalition, which would see his defeat. Before Napoleon's invasion, Russia looked like this, controlling a large part of the former Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Now in our timeline, the Russians kept all of this Polish territory, even gaining more Central Polish lands. Did you guys agree? No, you didn't. We gave you 5 choices for the future of Poland. Full annexation into Russia, full independence of Poland, restoration of a smaller Poland, the repartition of Poland, or the solution of our timeline. You guys clearly don't like Russia much, as by far most of you voted to restore Poland fully. This is a major slap in the face for Russia. Russia has bled and died to be a major factor in the defeat of Napoleon. In exchange, they lost many territories which they had held long before Napoleon even invaded. During the Napoleonic Wars, Russia had also waged a war with the Ottoman Empire, expanding their Black Sea holdings. These gains they would be allowed to keep, but up north, Russia had also waged a war with Sweden, taking Finland for themselves. Is Russia allowed to keep this territory? Also no. You guys decided that Finland should become an independent state following the war. All in all, the Russians would be furious with this Congress of Vienna. Here are the alternate borders of Russia over the borders of our own timeline. Yikes. This peace deal is so humiliating for Russia. Even if all 4 other great powers had united to demand it, Russia would likely prefer war over accepting this outcome. But sadly for Russia, they aren't stronger than the will of the people, and these are the borders that you guys chose. Moving on, let's discuss the star of the Napoleonic Wars, France themselves. Considering how they've conquered most of Europe, destroyed nations, destabilized Europe beyond compare and caused the death of millions, their punishment in our own timeline was very mild, barely losing any territory from their 1792 borders. But does the YouTube audience agree with this course of action is the question. In southern France, we have the matter of Roussillon, a small bit of Catalonia controlled by France. Should France keep it? Should Spain regain it? Or, as the wildcard option, should it be given to a newly independent Catalonia, which would become a buffer state between France and Spain? You voted to create the independent state of Catalonia, meaning that France lost their first bit of territory. But the next vote would be a bit more painful, as the fate of Brittany is under review. 3 options were given: stay with France, join Britain, or become an independent state. Most of you voted to restore Brittany as an independent state, breaking off the first significant piece of France. Similar votes were also held over Provence, Normandy, Alsace, Avignon and Lorraine, but in all of these cases, the people chose to keep the territory in French hands. Alsace though was very close, as the option for the territory to be divided between Switzerland and Prussia was very popular as well. Speaking of Switzerland, you also had the option to keep them the same or expand them massively. Tragically though, you guys voted against Greater Switzerland. But all of these votes were minor compared to the vote regarding the future of the lowlands. First, Habsburg controlled Belgium, which with a great majority was joined with the Dutch to create the United Kingdom of the Netherlands, with the Bishopric of Liège also added to the nation. Luxembourg was chosen to be in a personal union with the Dutch, while being allowed to keep Rhineland territory, which they lost to Prussia in our timeline. But all of this was child's play compared to this question: should the Low Countries expand into France? Your options ranged from the Dutch gain nothing to massive Dutch expansion. There were also some options in between, but with an extremely close vote, you guys decided to give the Dutch everything they could have wanted, creating this massive Dutch empire in Europe. Sorry for the quick intermission, but by far most of you aren't subscribed. To keep up to date with the 2 videos I release every single week, consider doing so. Thank you. Next up, we move on to Germany, where in our timeline, the region was heavily reorganized, cutting down on the amount of small independent states, and very importantly, massively strengthening the Prussians. The old Holy Roman Empire was also replaced with the much more relevant and streamlined German Confederation. But how did you guys handle the region? First, the Rhineland, an extremely important region, not just in wealth and potential, but also in terms of proximity to France. There were several options between Prussia, Austria, and even France gaining major territories, or just a reset of the situation to 1792. Much like in our own timeline, you elected to give the Rhineland to Prussia, finally making Prussia a true great power in size and wealth. Similarly, a very important vote was held over Saxony, where the two main options were a restoration and massive expansion of Saxony or the annexation of the state into Prussia. With an extremely slim majority, you voted to give the entire region to Prussia, consolidating their hold over northern Germany. But Hanover has the potential to make Prussia the definitive North German power, linking their entire nation together. The three options were annexation by Prussia, restoration and expansion under Britain, as we saw in our timeline, or Hanoverian independence. It was a very close race, but the British did win out in the end. To conclude northern Germany, there is the matter of Denmark, who controlled the overwhelmingly German territories of Schleswig-Holstein. With an easy majority, you guys decided to give Prussia this territory. Speaking of Denmark, they also controlled Norway, which in our timeline was awarded to Sweden as a thanks for their contributions during the war. You guys agreed that Denmark should lose Norway, but disagreed over who should get it. The option of an independent state of Norway just barely lost out to Sweden, who gained the territory, so Sweden now looks just like it does in our timeline. But unlike our timeline, the Kingdom of Norway used to include territories like Greenland and Iceland, which in our timeline would remain with Denmark after the peace deal. You guys disagreed though, and transferred these territories to Sweden as well, making Denmark pathetically small. Moving on to southern Germany, there is the major question of Bavaria. They sided with the French during the war, and the question now is, should we punish them? In our timeline, the answer was no, as they actually massively expanded. But you guys disagreed, instead giving the throne of Bavaria to the Austrians, finally giving Austria more German people to rule over. Interestingly, this also gives Austria a minor portion of Western Germany. Now very luckily, you guys did prevent massive border gore by annexing Salzburg into Austria as well. Although, now that I look at it, I cannot really say that border gore was prevented. To conclude Germany, there is the matter of the Holy Roman Empire. Destroyed during the Napoleonic Wars, should it be restored? No, you decided. Okay. Should Germany unite as a Habsburg federation? Again, surprisingly, no. You went instead with a solution of our timeline, creating a new German confederation, binding Germany together in military alliance. Now the final border changes we need to discuss all concern Italy. In our timeline, the bulk of Italy came under direct or indirect Habsburg rule, but you guys immediately shattered this Habsburg dream by restoring the Republic of Venice, though previously held Venetian territories in the Balkan were ceded to Austria. Lombardia, which already was Austrian before the war, now becomes an independent state, expanding into Mantua as well. Now at this point, even if Austria still controls these minor Italian states, without Venetian cooperation they couldn't really do much there. But even this you guys wouldn't give to Austria, as you further reduced their influence by expanding Sardinia-Piedmont into central Italy. This would further bolster Sardinia's new place as a major power in Europe, especially after you allowed them to not just annex Genoa, but also Corsica from France. In a complete surprise move, it was also voted that the Papal States should be abolished, instead replaced with a new Roman Republic. The South would, just like in our timeline, be united into the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. Malta, previously held by the British, would then also be ceded to Sicily. To complete our European map, the small territory of Ragusa, which was annexed by Austria in our timeline, becomes an independent state again. To conclude, we need to zoom out to the world map again, where we focus on South Africa and Sri Lanka. They were Dutch territories before the war, but were seized by the British, since both were very important territories for their colonial dominance. You voted to keep this territory Dutch, giving the Dutch a much more important colonial role in the post-Vienna world. So, with the voting over, this is the map of Europe we've ended up with. The era of goodwill, started by our timeline's Vienna, doesn't exist. Prussia, Sardinia and the Dutch are the only real victors of this timeline, with especially France and Russia furious about the new borders. How will Europe develop from here? Find out Saturday when I release the follow-up video exploring this alternate history. Subscribe to get notified when that releases. Now I love this concept and I hope to do more of these coupled with alternate histories. Let me know if this interests you and what you'd like me to do this with next. But for now, this is where I'll end this video. Thank you all for watching, consider leaving a like and a comment to support the content, and subscribe for 2 more videos every single week. To continue watching, click on one of the 2 videos on screen now. Again, thank you all for watching, and goodbye.